my presence and my win really serve as a nightmare for this president and his followers. This manufactured crisis can only end when the inhabitants of the White House decide that they have to give up on their fantasy wall. The wall really is a symbol of xenophobia and racism, holding the American people hostage so that they can get a political win. Immigration system really is extremely broken. We have to make sure that we have one in place that is humane, just, and fair. There is a narrative around what Muslim women are like. We're supposed to be submissive and oppressed. We have made the impossible possible by getting here. Impeachment for this president, I believe, is inevitable.
In November's U.S. midterm elections, she became one of the first 2 Muslim American women to be elected to the U.S. Congress, and the first to be wearing a hijab. But her story doesn't start there. She's been making her mark ever since she came to the United States as a refugee, fleeing the civil war in Somalia. Today, she represents a new generation of Democrats. I'm Ali Janayanar, and I'll be speaking to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar in her first international interview since taking office, one-on-one. My first question to you, this current government shutdown, the longest in American history, what are politicians like yourself planning on doing to get the government running again?
Yeah, so we have taken this first week in the new majority to put forth bills that will help reopen the government. And we're just waiting for the Senate Republicans to do their job and for the inhabitants of the White House to follow suit.
But politics is all about giving a little, taking a little to get what you want. Right. What are the Democrats ready to provide to the other side so some progress can be made?
Well, what we have provided is bills that will help reopen the government. And so we are not going to negotiate to fund a xenophobic wall that is supposed to serve a monument for this president.
We won't stop the shutdown now!
And it's Trump's proposed border wall that is at the heart of the U.S.'s longest-lasting government shutdown. 25% of the government has stopped working because of a dispute between President Trump and Democrat leaders. Caught in the middle are 800,000 federal employees who have been sent home and are not being paid. And as the stalemate continues, President Trump is doing everything to push for one of his biggest campaign promises.
I would build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me. And I'll build them very inexpensively. I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
Mexico has repeatedly refused to pay for the wall. Now, Trump wants $5.7 billion from the American taxpayers. Democrats think it's a waste of money and believe there are better ways to beef up border security.
The president has chosen fear. We want to start with the facts. The fact is, on the very first day of this Congress, House Democrats passed Senate Republican legislation to reopen government and fund smart, effective border security solutions. But the president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall, a wall he always promised Mexico would pay for.
Why are you against the wall?
The wall really is a symbol of xenophobia and racism. We can have an opportunity to open the government that is real, and we can come back to the table and have a real conversation about immigration reform and figure out what it will take for us to secure the border. Right now, the bills that we have put forth that will help reopen the government, there is funding to make sure that there is investment in securing the border. And it looks like the inhabitants of the White House, the Senate Republicans, and our colleagues here on the other side of the aisle are not interested in that conversation. For them, it's about holding the American people hostage so that they can get a political win.
You refer to President Donald Trump as the inhabitor of the White House. Any specific reason why that's the case for you?
Well, the presidency for me holds such great weight, and there are times where I might slip and use that to describe him, but oftentimes it's really hard because in order to have respect, you have to give respect, and this inhabitor of the White House has refused to respect the American people, the Constitution, and what it means to be a leader of this nation.
So for the Congresswoman, Trump's proposed border wall is something that she will not negotiate on.
Right now, this manufactured crisis can only end when the inhabitants of the White House decide that they have to give up on their fantasy wall. And for the Democrats, we've heard from the American people, we are not negotiating any immigration policy to reopen the government. The bills right now that will reopen the government are being sent to the Senate, and we are expecting the Senate to pass those bills, and we're expecting the inhabitants of the White House to follow suit. We are not in a position to negotiate an immigration policy while we have Americans living with the fear of not feeding their families or paying their mortgage or their car payments. It's a non-starter, and the American people sent us to Congress to care about their well-being, and that's what we're doing.
Ilhan Omar knows all too well what it means to be living in fear and as an immigrant. In 1991, when the Somali government collapsed, her home country quickly spiraled into a deadly civil war. Her family was forced to flee to neighboring Kenya when she was only 8 years old. There, they lived in a refugee camp for 4 years before applying and being accepted to settle in the United States as refugees in 1995. Having gone through an extensive vetting and lengthy immigration process, Omar has first-hand experience and agrees that the country does need to reform its current immigration policy.
Yeah, so our immigration system really is extremely broken. We have to make sure that we have one in place that is humane, just, and fair. A lot of the challenges within our immigration system right now is it lacks accessibility and affordability. So what we have to do is that we have to make sure that the folks in here, in this country currently that are undocumented, that we give them a permanent status so that they are able to continue to lead their life and not live in fear of being deported back. The other thing that we must do is that we give people an easier way to access permanent residency in this country. Many people become undocumented because they can't renew their visas. They don't have a way to have asylum be granted for them. I remember even when I was becoming a citizen, I wanted to wait because it costs so much for people to apply. And I remember my dad saying, "Well, you don't have to fill out paperwork because you're a citizen, because I became a citizen for you." And so there is a process that makes it hard for folks to have their American dream realized.
Omar's American dream quickly took on a political tone when she started to help out as an interpreter for her grandfather at local caucuses as a young teenager. She continued to climb the steps of politics by taking on roles in various campaigns. And in 2016, she decided to take her political career to the next level. 2016 was also the year that an unlikely presidential candidate was launching his career.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Trump's election campaign was one built on America first. And a big part of that message were filled with promises of harsher immigration policies.
Well, thank you, everybody. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
2 years ago, when President Trump was still on his campaign trail in Omar's home state of Minnesota, he rallied his supporters to that tune.
How stupid are our leaders? How stupid are they to allow this to happen? Here in Minnesota, you've seen firsthand the problems caused with faulty refugee vetting, with large numbers of Somali refugees coming into your state without your knowledge, without your support or approval, and with some of them then joining ISIS and spreading their extremist views all over our country and all over the world.
Minnesota has the nation's largest Somali community, and Trump's comments weren't received well in some parts of the state. Trump lost the state, but he won the White House. November 8th, 2016 marked an important milestone for Omar. She had run on the Democratic Farmer-Labor ticket for the Minnesota House of Representatives. And she won the election, becoming the first Somali American legislator in the United States.
It's kind of interesting. As I got sworn in on Tuesday, some people were making comments about the fact that I was getting sworn in on a Quran, and they forget that this country we live in, a lot of people came because of religious freedom. There isn't one particular religion that is supposed to govern it. And when we say in God we trust, there isn't a particular God we point to. Well, what my reality and my victory does, I think, for a lot of people is that it says that things are possible. You know, it gives them hope. It inspires them to work harder, to continue dreaming, and to keep believing that things will get better.
Seeing a deeply divided country, Omar made an even bigger political move and decided to run for Minnesota's seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. She quickly caught the attention of the nation, appearing alongside A-list celebrities. And on the cover of Time magazine. She won with more than three-quarters of the vote, becoming the first Somali American elected to the U.S. Congress, the first Muslim former refugee to be elected to the House, the first woman of color to serve as a U.S. representative from Minnesota, and, alongside former Michigan State Representative Rashida Tlaib, one of the first Muslim women elected to the U.S. Congress.
We're going to Washington, everyone!
And in an added twist of fate, to begin her term as a U.S. Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar flew to the same airport she arrived 23 years ago as a refugee fleeing the war in Somalia. She was sworn into office using the Quran of her late grandfather, who helped raise her.
Your election to the U.S. House of Representatives, not only that, but also before that, do you feel that you are played an important role in breaking down the stereotype of the Muslim woman being silent?
Yeah, I mean, there is, you know, a narrative around what Muslim women are like. We are supposed to be submissive and oppressed. and it is really glorious for two bold and apologetic Muslim women to now represent the people here in the United States. Oftentimes you can try to have a conversation about those kind of things and tell people, like, that's not what I am, that's not how I think of myself. But sometimes a picture speaks louder than words, and I think our visibility here in itself serves as a counter-narrative to everything that has been said about us.
Ilhan Omar is part of an extraordinarily diverse class of representatives. A sentiment that was shared by the most senior Democrat in the House.
So yesterday we made history, again, swearing in this transformative freshman class. When they took the oath, they made a difference.
She joins the other 101 women in the House of Representatives. Women had never before held more than 84 of the 435 seats there. With such an emboldened group of lawmakers, Omar says she is ambitious to get the ball rolling.
Our priority is to establish the people's agenda. For me, as a representative to one of the youngest districts in this country, is to make sure that we are putting forth an education policy that frees students from the shackles of debt, that we are funding infrastructure and emphasizing 21st century infrastructure and expanding broadband. That's one of the top priorities for my state. It looks like working on a humane immigration policy and really dealing with this climate crisis that we are having. My oldest daughter just wrote a speech that she presented to our new governor in Minnesota, where she talks about this crisis that would lead possibly to the end of our existence by 2030. And she told him how her baby sister, who's 6 right now, is supposed to turn 18, and she wants to make sure that there is life for her to lead. And we must create investments today to make sure that we have a future preserved for them.
That's a very hopeful and pleasant picture to look at in terms of the future of this country. Do you think that's possible to achieve this in this political environment?
I mean, we have made the impossible possible by getting here. So I believe we can do the work in making sure that our agenda is established here.
One agenda that doesn't overlap with the president's is the so-called Muslim travel ban. It indefinitely suspends the entry of people from 5 Muslim-majority countries, including her home country of Somalia.
It's not a Muslim ban, but we were totally prepared. It's working out very nicely. You see it at the airports, you see it all over. It's working out very nicely, and we're going to have a very, very strict ban, and we're going to have extreme vetting, which we should have had in this country for many years. Thank you, everybody.
No ban, no wall! No ban, no wall!
The United States Supreme Court upheld the president's ban, delivering him a political victory and an endorsement of his power to control immigration at a time of political upheaval.
Now you represent, or you are, a lot of things that President Trump at one point or another has made some very disrespectful comments. You are a woman. You are a Muslim. You are a former refugee. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's sort of exciting that I think my presence and my win really serve as a nightmare for this president and his followers. I think it is really important for people who have been demonized, vilified, who have been invisible and sitting in the margins of society to finally be seen in a representation here in the People's House. And so I get really excited about the prospect of so many young people feeling like they themselves are part of this government, and they themselves are capable of creating positive change in their country.
In one of your previous interviews, you talked about something from your culture, your heritage, and possibly even your family, that if you invite your family into an enemy into your house, you can sit down and have coffee with them, and actually you can start to come together. If you had the chance to have coffee with President Trump, what would that conversation be like?
That conversation would have a couple of components. One of the first ones would be to kind of awaken him from this silliness that he has created around him. He needs to realize that that it is an honor and a privilege to represent the people of the United States, and people are looking to make sure that the respect and the honor of that office stays intact. And I would plead with him to uphold that. And second, part of that conversation would be for us to really talk about some of the things that he has said about people who come from countries like mine, and to have a really an honest conversation about his deep-rooted racism and xenophobic tendencies.
President Trump's alleged racism hit the headlines, with the Washington Post reporting that he used an expletive to describe African countries during an Oval Office immigration meeting. It's clear that Ilhan Omar has had to overcome many obstacles in her life. And as much as she serves as an inspiration for millions of Americans, she has also made some controversial comments and picked up enemies as a result. In 2012, she tweeted, "Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel." These days, her stance seems to be more in line with most of the international community when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Are you a supporter of a two-state solution?
I am. I'm a supporter of a two-state solution. I think it is important for there to be the recognition and the ability for people in Israel and in Palestine to have self-determination. But what I have always emphasized on is that we must have accountability for the detrimental policies that are coming out of Israel at the moment, and we have to make sure that there is accountability to the oppression that they're causing.
And how are you going to make that happen?
There's so many ways to do that. We're doing that, one, by supporting and talking about the BDS movement. There are opportunities to make sure that there is accountability in regards of votes that might come up. You know, there's a visual and vocal representation and advocacy that we can do. But now that we are policymakers, there are some ways that we can impact the policies that the United States has with the Middle East.
One final question, I do. Let's talk about the I word. Do you want the president to be impeached?
That is inevitable. Impeachment for this president, I believe, is inevitable.
And this is an agenda that you're willing to push straight off the bat, right off the bat?
I don't think it's something that needs to be pushed. It is going to be very inevitable. Every thing that has happened since this president was inaugurated is pointing to the fact that this president will not finish his presidency. And I am excited about the opportunity to make sure that there is an accountability and check and balance to that.
Congresswoman, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.